Hello, hello, hello. How are ya? Trevor here. Me, myself, and I. Stream number 3. Not that I'm counting, but this is the first live stream that I'm doing in the day on Saturday. This is specifically to try and speak to my folks in like Europe or maybe even Australia. I'm not even sure what the time difference is. It's a lot. And the people in Australia are in the future. Anyway, thanks for joining me here. Good to see y'all here. There are some folks here, which is great. Vortex here. Oh, hello. Vortex Games is a longtime supporter of the channel, but I think also the Broken Empires. Big fan of Broken Empires, if I recall. Vortex, you have the store up in the East Coast, isn't that right? Let me know in the comments below. Everyone can hear me? Can you hear me? Oh, yes, great. Loud and clear. Loud and cleat. That's even better than clear. Loud and cleat. Good. I am pleased. As I get used to these things, perhaps I will also begin to trust the technology and hope that the technology actually works. There's nothing more amateur sounding than coming on the beginning of every stream and saying, "Is this thing on? Hello, can you hear me?" It's just, that's nuts. So hopefully I'm going to bypass that very, very soon. Anywho, I see there's a bunch of you here, which is awesome. Welcome all of you. There's some folks here in America, and I think some other folks here too. I'm going to try and get to all of your comments and questions, because that's the whole point of this thing, is to just have sort of an open conversation about whatever you want to talk about. This is not specifically about the Broken Empires, but of course the Broken Empires will come up. I still will be doing, for those of you who are watching this outside of the live streaming portion of it, I still will be doing the occasional general YouTube live chat. And of course, if you are Broken Empires supporter or backer, you should have been getting monthly emails every month, because we release updates every month telling you exactly where we are in the process. And where we are in the process is far along the road. We can see the light at the end of the tunnel. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be releasing, I think, the 28th update. Could be the 28th update today, because it's the last day of January. We try and get these out once a month. So yeah, that's what you're going to get in your email inbox. And if you don't get it, make sure you check your settings, because you should be getting them. And at the very worst case scenario, you can go to the Kickstarter page and see the updates there. But we are keeping people in the loop as much as we can, because we want you guys to know where we're at, because we're making great progress, and we're almost there, which is awesome. So let us see where we're at here. I'm going to try and keep up, which is going to be hard. Hello. I'm East Coast and didn't do the time translation, so just had it up and in the background. Well, that's okay too. All right. So Vortex, you play Wednesday nights, so you can't make those. Well, that's a noble reason to not be at the live stream, because you're actually doing something more important, which is gaming. What are you playing on Wednesday nights? Are you running a game? Are you in a game? You have the store. Is that right? I always forget. Yes, there we go. Yes. New Hampshire-based retail store. So are you one of these guys that runs games at the store or has games happening in the store? Because I have a colleague of mine here in San Antonio who runs a great game store called Nightwatch. And that store is very, very popular for all kinds of reasons, but one of the reasons is because they've got all these great tables and people go there every night to play, and it just creates this really great sort of atmosphere. So are you doing stuff like that? Or if not, what is your method, man? I'm just curious. Just curious. Good to see you too, Gordon. Thanks for coming out to play. Is anybody from Europe on the stream right now? I'm just curious, because that is, as I said, that is kind of the whole reason why I'm doing these Saturday afternoon ones, to try and give folks over there a chance to jump on the stream. Pathfinder 2E Society. You are playing that. Oh, okay. Now, Society, is that like organized play? I don't really do a lot of that, so I don't know a lot about that, but is that how that works? Is the Pathfinder Society like what's the one they do with 5e? I don't even remember. I played another friend's store. He has a bigger space. Oh, cool. Well, I'm glad to see that there's multiple stores up there. Because, I was in LA for 8 years, And in the whole time I was there was like one decent game store that was catering to role-playing stuff. There was a lot of like, Magic the Gathering stores and, strictly D&D stuff. But as you who know me know, D&D is not exactly my bag. But there was one place. It was in Santa Monica, and it was called something that I forget. But it was great. I went down there as often as I could, which was not often because Santa Monica from Toluca Lake, where I lived, was it's only about, I think, 15 miles. But in LA, that 15 miles could take you 2 hours. So it was always an epic journey to go down there. But it was great. And then I think they closed probably during the pandemic. But it was amazing to me that this city of Los Angeles, with millions and millions of people, had like no gaming stores. And then I came to San Antonio, and I was like, there's a gaming store on every corner. It was amazing. It's just weird how different cities have these different cultures. And I suspect maybe part of it is because San Antonio is a military city, and I know that those army brats tend to play a lot of games, so maybe that's the reason. I don't know, that's just a theory. That's just a theory. Oh, Harmon is in Holland. Awesome. Oh, by the way, Harmon, I think you wrote me a message. Did you not? Was this on Discord? Asking about a few things like my thought process for making the final episodes of Me, Myself, and I. Was that you? Because I got your questions and I'm gonna answer them. We're gonna talk about that stuff. Organized play. Yes. Okay. Good. Also, let me know how the stream quality is for you guys right now, because I'm trying a few different settings, and I just want to make sure that everything is actually working okay. I've had a couple of weird dropouts on the last few streams, and I don't know why. Anyway, hopefully that doesn't happen again. Oh, we've got Len Valencia from Spain. Hello, my friend. Welcome to be joining us here on this live stream. Adventure League, that's it. 5e's Adventure League. Not being a 5e guy, I don't remember the terminology of the things. Gordon is not in Europe, but would like to be. California. You're in California. I, too, was in California once upon a time. I'm a 48-plus year role-playing game player, so your stuff is amazing for me to get into, so I personally back the hell. I backed the hell out of your pledge. I backed the all-in pledge, and my store will carry all your stuff. That is great to hear. Thank you. That's awesome. It's interesting. I do want to talk about this, I think. This term, TTRPG, tabletop role-playing game, I actually find that term moderately offensive. And I'll tell you why. Because we were here first. We were here first before the computer role-playing game. And when I was young, when the computer role-playing games come out, they were called CRPGs. And we were the RPGs because we were the originals. We were here first. And over time, as the computer games became vastly more popular, that grabbed and seized the mantle of RPG. And now we were relegated to those two little T's as a prefix before RPG. And that drives me nuts every time I see it. Because we should not have to be the ones that qualify our name. They should qualify their name. So for me, talking about role-playing games will always be RPGs. And talking about computer RPGs will be CRPGs. Even though I think I broke that rule in the text of my book, in The Broken Empires. I'm pretty sure I call it TTRPGs. Because I've been conditioned, like the rest of you, conditioned to think TTRPG. Nope, it is RPG. Whatever. That is my own old man coming out. Okay, yes, good. Harmon, these were your questions. Awesome. Mapagano. I'm not even going to bother trying to pronounce your handles here, guys. Exotic Massachusetts. That's awesome. Robert Dean, welcome from Delaware. I would love to have a game store like that around here. Yeah. It sucks to be in a center where there's not a lot of game stores. That sucks. It does suck. I know it well because, like I said, in LA, there was none, and it's just it was a real bummer, man. It's a real bummer. Yeah, Vortek, you know what I'm talking about. OG RPG player like me, so I get that. Pen and paper RPGs, yeah, I hate that too because it's not a pen and paper RPG. It's just an RPG. The computer game that stole our idea and digitized it, they should be CRPGs. We are just RPGs. Anyway, all right. Enough about these kids these days. Spoctavian, welcome. Howdy, folks. Hope you all are having a great day. When I started, they were fantastic medieval war games campaigns. Yeah, well, or what did Gary call it back in the 70s? Fantasy miniature tabletop battle games or some really wordy thing like that. Hard to believe. Gygax having a big wordy mouthful. That's unusual. I remember the first time I read the DMG, and I was very young. It was late 70s, early 80s. And, when you cut your teeth on Gary Gygax when you're trying to learn how to read, he teaches you a lot of big words. And he teaches you how to be very verbose, because when you read the first edition Dungeon Master's Guide, wow, it's walls of text. He goes on a bit. Zagrid, welcome. The Me, Myself, and Die series reinvigorated my desire to run a game, so I will be running a Shadow Dark game this coming Friday. That is awesome. Congratulations. It's always good to hear that people are actually out there playing. Here in town, my friend group, which my local friend group is also the group that helps me design and produce the Broken Empires, we have not had a chance to do our regular Friday games for a couple of years now because of the Broken Empires, and it's really getting me down. So we had a big conversation a few weeks ago about how I said, look, guys, I need this. I need to remember why I'm doing this. I need to play. And we all agreed, but it's just a scheduling, man. So we had to do what everyone has to do, which is commit and say, come hell or high water, once a week or whenever, we're going to be doing this. That's the only way you can do it. I remember in sort of my golden age of gaming, which, well, I had a couple, thank God. But my most recent golden age of gaming, I was in my late 30s. I was living in Vancouver. I had nothing but time and money and friends and games. So I was playing, I think, 5 games a week and running like 2. It was amazing. Oh, it was amazing. It was the dream. But the ones that I was running, typically it was like the big game was Sunday nights. And the deal was with my players, Sunday night, 7 o'clock, be here, because we're starting at 7. And everybody committed to it. And when everybody commits, there's no question of whether you can make it or not. You just make it. And yes, of course, life happens occasionally. There's some weird scheduling thing, or, you broke your arm or something BS like that. Your wife's having a baby. Give me a break. But other than that, people, they came. And what was interesting, too, is that we were so dedicated to the game that one of the fellows I was playing with, Michael, our mutual friend, very, very good friend of mine, one of my best friends, Andrea, she would say to me, she wasn't involved in the games, but she would say, "Oh, so you saw Michael Sunday? How was he?" I said, "He's alive. He's." And she'd be like, "What? What do you? Don't you know?" I'm like, "Well, I know how his character is. I know his character just made level 7, so that's good. Is that what you want to know?" Because we were so focused on the game, must play the game, that there was no time for, hey, how are you? So, how was your week? What's going on with the Nah. It was bang, dice hit the table, pow, we're in, Anyway, you got to commit, right? You got to commit if you want it to work. And that's hard for a lot of people, because of, life. Life sometimes gets in the way. Anyway, I don't know why I got on that. I don't know why I got on a tangent here. Let's see. When I started role-playing, it was all AD&D. Yeah, well, that's what it was back in those days, man. For most of us, there were still other games around, but they weren't as heavily promoted where I was. There was RuneQuest. There was Traveler. There was all the GDW games. There was as the years went on, obviously there was more, but RuneQuest, Traveler, Tunnels and Trolls, which I never actually played. Or the other one I never played was Tecumel. Because Tecumel, I think, was just a setting for AD&D. I could be getting that wrong because I never played it. So anyway, I'm sure maybe one of you has. So let me know in the comments below. Anywho, coo. Where are we here? Greetings from Europe. Oh, yes, Adalada. I believe, Adalada. Na. You also had a question for me. And I have it here. So I will answer that too. Talking about the travel system in the Broken Empires. So we will definitely get to that. What I love... Oh, look at this, Vortec. For some reason, your thing's cut off in the chat. I'm going to have to fix that. But I can't do that right now. But I will fix that later. What I love is I am starting to teach my grandkids. Oh, are we there? To play RPGs. We're doing Shadow Dark, and they just hit 2nd level. They're 10 and 7. Yeah, that's about when I started, around 7. Love it and pay attention for... They love it and they pay attention for about 2 hours, which in this day and age of TikTok videos stealing the attention of the youth, that's awesome. I applaud you. I applaud you, sir. I applaud you. All right. Where are we here? I saw Gygax at a Gen Con, and he was verbose in speaking as in writing. Classic chain smoker, too. Really? I didn't know that. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be that surprised. We were all smokers back in those days. Well, I wasn't. Not in his day, because his day was like 70s, 80s. I didn't start smoking till, when was it? 87, I think. I quit. I've long since quit, but I was a very heavy smoker for about 12 years. I've been off for, well, since 26 years this month, as a matter of fact. Anyway, I didn't know he was a chain smoker. Oops, not that one. Where are we here? This one. My friends were entranced at him just lighting cigarette while he's speaking. Ah, yes, the old days. The old days when you could smoke anywhere, and it was just accepted. I remember when I first moved to Vancouver. This was in 98, and I was still a smoker at the time. Heavy smoker. And I remember going to this restaurant, and the hostess was seating us, and I said, well, there was 3 of us. I said, well, 3 for smoking. And she went, smoking? She looked at me like I had 2 heads, because of course Vancouver had, at that time, they had been sort of one of the first adopters of getting rid of smoking sections, and I was so offended. How dare you trample on my rights as a smoker? It was a different world. It was a different world. Let's see here. We've been experimenting with a session cadence of 2 to 3 weeks on and 1 week off, like welders. It's worked pretty well so far. Benefits of weekly sessions, but people also know when they have a break week coming up. I understand that. For me, me personally, don't need a break from the thing that I love to do the most, which is play the game. If it was up to me, I'd play every other day. Because I did in my late 30s. I was playing every other day on some game, but that's highly unusual, and truly only the truly privileged can get away with that. So I recognize that, but hey, whatever works, whatever works to keep your group interested and wanting to come back to the table. That's the game. That's the ball game right there. You got to keep the momentum up in any campaign, unless you're just doing like one-offs, right? Then it's not as important, I think. But yeah, you got to keep the momentum up, because people very quickly fall off, and it's so easy. I mean, we've all been there, whether we're running a campaign or whether we're involved in a campaign, where the momentum just dies, and it doesn't take much, right? All it takes is for 1 or 2 missed sessions, and then, you start to, and it doesn't take long, man. Like within a month, that campaign could be dead. So you gotta commit. That's why, like, the group I'm with now, in-person group, we're all very serious about that, because we're getting old and we don't have time to waste. That sounds really dark, but it's the truth. We want to, the time we spend on the game, we want to be quality time, and we want to carve out time in our lives to make room for the thing that we love, right? But you do have to carve it out. It's one of those things you have to tend to. Not so much when you're young, when you're a teenager, or even in your early 20s in university or college or whatever. It's a lot easier to do that. But, of course, as we all know, when you get older, life begins to pull you away, and it takes a lot more effort to make the effort. It makes more effort to take the effort. But it's worth it, right? If we love this thing, it's worth it. And you got to find the right group of people that is willing to commit to that and enjoy that with you, who share the same kind of passions for it, right? Any idea what your next Sages library will be? No, I don't know. There's a bunch that I could do. I could do Dragonbane. Because remember that the Sages Library specifically is about games that I have experience with. It's not just a review show. It's not just me looking at a book, flipping through it, and saying, here's my ideas on the game. Because you need to play the game to understand the game. I truly believe that. Not to throw shade on anybody who's doing reviews without playing the game, because there's only so many hours in the day. And if your YouTube channel is all about reviewing games, you cannot be expected to play a huge campaign of every single game you review. But the Sages Library is different, because the Sages Library is about telling you my experiences as a game master or a player or both with these particular games. And that's slightly different than just a, hands top-down review of the game. So I don't know. Dragonbane is one of them. Twilight 2000, the Free League version, is one of them. Axe 2 is one of them, because I've been playing that. Although I wouldn't feel comfortable doing a Sages Library on Axe 2 because I have such a limited experience of it. I'm a player in it, and I've played one character in it, so I don't really feel that that's a fair assessment. Although there's a lot of players, so you do get a nice sense of how the game works. So I don't know that, or I could do things like Ironsworn, but it seems a bit superfluous for me to do Ironsworn as a Sages Library episode, because there's like 18 episodes of Ironsworn, of me playing Ironsworn on the channel. I don't know. I don't know. There's a few options, but it is on the list at some point. The biggest thing on the list right now is actually to finish Season 4, and that I'm hoping will happen this week. I'm hoping that the final episode, or what I presume to be the final episode, you never know with the dice, will be recorded this week, and then I'll edit it as I can and then release it when I can. Of course, you subscribers to the channel will all get ample warning about when the show airs, because I like to make an event of the airing of those episodes, especially if it's a finale. I like to give people enough lead up to be able to come and watch it live, because it feels like a live performance that way, even though it's not, obviously. It's pre-recorded, but it feels like that. If I can be part of that chat too, the live chat with the YouTube audience, that's really what I like to do. So, I try and make the finales an event. So, presuming that this next episode is the finale, I will, of course, announce it so that everybody can try and come and check it out at the same time, because that'd be really great. Tecumel was a variant of D&D, but did include complete rules, not just a D&D setting. Oh, okay, cool, thank you. A friend of mine just got a copy of that, so I'll be curious to see what he thinks about it. I think he even threatened to run it for us. We'll see. I'm playing a Dragonbane campaign right now. It's a great system, but a little too light for my taste. I can understand that. It's interesting, coming from more rules-heavy systems as I do, like Harnmaster, Mithras, or even the Broken Empires is in that world, is in that category, although not quite as complex as those games. I get that. I long for somewhat lighter games sometimes. I didn't feel Dragonbane to be system light. For me, Dragonbane was actually a kind of a perfect blend of complexity and speed of play, but it depends on my mood, right? Like, the Broken Empires is a game that really drills deep into really specific things, especially in combat. So you've got very detailed hit locations, very detailed effects of specific wounds, whereas obviously Dragonbane doesn't have that. It's got hit points. But sometimes you're in the mood for hit points, right? That's why people say to me, oh, so is the Broken Empires now your new favorite game? No, there is no new favorite game. My favorite game is the game I'm currently enjoying right now. There's no such thing as the perfect game. So it all depends on what your mood is. But that's cool. I'm not a huge fan of system light games for extended periods, but I really enjoy them for shorter games, right? Just because for me, if a system is too light, then there's not a lot of meat on the bones to support a longer campaign, and that's not always universally true. But in my experience, that's been the case. So, whatever. It's all just what I'm in the mood for in the moment, I started in the 70s, white box and AD&D. Bulk of my time was 3.5 with Forgotten Realms, then moved to Pathfinder. So Pathfinder 1 then. So you're basically a 3.75 guy, right? Because that's essentially what Pathfinder 1 was. It was interesting. I think the reason why I bounced off Pathfinder when it first came out was because I had just finished a giant 3.5 campaign, and I was so burned out on the complexity of higher level characters in D&D 3.5 that I just thought anything that's derived from this complex monster, I don't want, and I mean the game, not the monsters in the game, I didn't want anything to do with. I just needed a break. I needed something way lighter. I think I went to Fate after that or something for a while anyway. Yeah. Yeah. I miss the high school days when we would just play 3 to 4 times a week. AD&D second edition. Sometimes we'd play through the entire weekend, barely sleeping. Oh, man, I remember those days. I absolutely remember those days. Yeah. So cool. So cool. Yeah, the amount of the amount of oh, I can't make this work. What's going on here? I'm trying to pause this message thing so I can see where we are. Yeah, the amount of weekends we played, you know, we would go out to like a friend's cabin and we would play for like 12 hours straight, you know. I miss those days. Those were fantastic. Yeah, high school when we all the time. It's interesting, D&D second edition, I missed that one. I had sort of yeah, there we are. I'd given up on D&D by that point. That was in the mid to late 80s, I think second edition came out. Late 80s, is that right? That sounds right. And I was off D&D by then. I was on to Warhammer and RuneQuest and everything else except D&D. So I completely missed that. Just like I missed 4th edition, because when I saw 4th edition, for one thing, I had no interest in going back to D&D. I had all these other games. But when I saw what 4th edition was doing, I was like, oh, they're just doing World of Warcraft. No thanks. Now, what's interesting is that with hindsight, when I look at what 4th edition does now, and I hear what people say about it, and I read it myself, I'm like, actually, I can see how this would be fun. But for me, it's not so much of a role-playing game, quotes, as it is like a really solid tactical minis game. But people will fight me on that, of course. Everybody has their thoughts on that. I'm not trying to pick a fight. I'm just saying I missed 2nd and 4th. So I don't have a huge amount of experience with. I have a lot of experience with the 2nd edition D&D settings. Like I have all the stuff from Forgotten Realms from the 1st edition, like the classic old gray box, which I still maintain was the best edition of that setting because it was the most loose and it was the most unexplored. And yeah, it wasn't. You weren't burdened by detail, which you kind of are now because it's been so overdeveloped, in my opinion. But 2nd edition, Forgotten Realms, they did change a few things with the Time of Troubles, and I know a lot of people hated that. I actually didn't. I used the Time of Troubles in my own way, in my own campaign, to make this really dark, really gritty kind of campaign that would have been right at home in a George R.R. Martin novel. But it was good, and I have a whole ton of the stuff, like really quality supplements. Back in those days, the Forgotten Realms was huge and varied in terms of its cultures. It really felt different. Like if you went from the savage frontier, which is the north, right? They don't call it the savage frontier anymore, but that's what they used to call it. And that is a more appropriate name for what it was because it was the wilderness, man. It was the wilderness. And I loved that. But then if you went down to the Dale Lands, completely different vibe. Or you went into Cormyr, or if you went into like, I can't remember the names of the kingdoms to the south. Tethyr and and around there, very different feel again, right? You almost get a tiny bit of sort of an Arabic feeling a little bit. Just really, really cool. But then as time went on, I feel that the Forgotten Realms, like so many settings in contemporary modern days, became just homogenized, where everybody's everything everywhere. And there's no sense of culture, you know? I like a fantasy setting that has a sense of culture, that if you're in a place, a particular place, geographic location, that place has a corresponding culture, and I want to feel what that culture is compared to the culture of the place I was in. For example, in my own setting, the Broken Empires, you could be in Angevin, which is like a version of Fantasy France a little bit. So the names will feel French. The customs will feel appropriate to what you might imagine a Fantasy French thing would be. But then if you go to Tigil Dandala, that's an analog to Fantasy Spain. So again, the names are different. The people look different. The melanin in their skin is slightly different because they come from further south. The culture, the food, the spices they use, all of that stuff is slightly different. So you don't have that just gray blob of a culture that modern day Forgotten Realms kind of turned into, right? Anyway, I don't want to get off on a tangent here, but 2nd edition Forgotten Realms I didn't have a problem with. 3rd edition too was okay, but then I feel the greatest sin that they did was in 4th edition when they went into spell plague territory. Was that the 4th edition or the 5th? I can't remember. Whenever it was, there was the thing where they radically changed the world, and it really just felt like they were radically changing the world for the sake of changing it and making it new and shiny, and I really hate that. I cannot stand changes to a setting that are not that seem to be motivated only by a desire to move more product, right? That's what it felt like, and that could be deeply cynical, and I could be wrong about that, but that was how it felt at the time. So I just didn't dig that at all. Anyway, all right, still trying to catch up here. So my chat window keeps moving down as I'm looking at a chat, and it takes me down so I can't see it, and that drives me nuts. Stop it. How do we do this? Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Oh, that's why. I got it. It kept jumping to the bottom. All right, I may have fixed it. Tech. I don't know tech. I don't know from tech. All right, here we are. At almost 65, my group of fellow seniors finds that 4 hours is about as much as we could take at a time. I understand that. I'm in my early 50s, and even I, at this relatively young age, still can feel the age creeping in. I don't know about a 5-hour game. So I get you, man. I totally get you. I'm just so pleased that there's a group of seniors playing the game. That makes me happy. That's my dream. I hope that I die in an old folks' home surrounded by gamers. I hope I die at a table running a game at the ripe age of like 99 or something. And yes, you killed the dragon. That'd be awesome. Damned Mark. Your Iron Sworn series got me hooked onto the game, and I love that it's so good for solo play. Well, thank you for that. Iron Sworn, of course, was specifically designed for solo play. In my first season, I had used Savage Worlds, which is not a game that is designed for solo play. It's just a regular old role-playing game. But I wanted to try something that was specifically designed for solo play. Because, the channel was born out of solo. So when I found Iron Sworn and had the meeting with Sean, the interview, I did an interview with Sean, the creator, at the very beginning of the season. So it was great. I had the blessing of the creator going into this season 2. But yeah, it was great. Iron Sworn. It took me a while to get into it because if you come from a more traditional gaming background, it can be a bit jarring to kind of wrap your mind around how to play it. But hopefully, as I learned to do it as we went along, hopefully that people who watch the show also got a sense of how it works just by watching. I've never said that my show is instructional. It's not designed to be a tutorial. But if people do learn something from it, then so much the better. Have you read The First Law by Joe Abercrombie? I have not, although I think I've heard about it. But I've not read it. I'd be happy to hear more about Dragonbane. I enjoyed the solo sessions you did. Thank you. Yeah, those were fun. Those were super fun. I really enjoyed Dragonbane a lot. As I said, no game is perfect, but I like it a lot. I like everything about it. I like the system. I like the art. I like the vibe of it. I like everything about it. It's like Free League's version of RuneQuest, basically, but with the D20 instead of percentile system, right down to the ducks. And a lot of people hate the ducks. I actually don't mind the ducks in Dragonbane because they're kind of badasses. So most of them are assassins. So I'm all right with that. I do want to get to some of these questions, though, before I forget. So Harmon, you asked me, you said, can you talk about your thought process for making the final episodes of Me, Myself, and Die? You talked about it a while ago. You were still in doubt how you would tackle the many rules changes between the hiatus and the newest one. So, yeah, what he's referring to here is because the rules were changing over the course of the season because I was using the season as a playtest, which I wouldn't do again. I don't think that served the show. It served me fine as an avenue to playtest the game, but I don't think it served the viewer, because I think if there were viewers that were trying to learn the game, which I wouldn't recommend doing from any of my shows, because as I just said, my shows are not tutorials, they're not instructional. But if you were trying to learn it because you were interested in it, it was not good because the rules kept changing. So I wouldn't do that again. But that said, I knew that I had come to a point where it had been over a year since I had released an episode, and the rules had changed so much since then. The philosophy of the rules were exactly the same. It was just the devil's in the details, right? So the question was, do I basically ignore most of the new rule changes and just skip to the end and just, tell the story, so to speak, and just get right to the heart of it? But eventually I thought, no, I want to play this game properly. So that's what I did in episode 11. There was, so at one point, Vale and Thrag had to get from the middle of nowhere back to the city of Venturir. And basically the choice was, do I use the travel rules as written, the new ones, the most current, and the ones that you will see when you buy the book? Available for pre-order now, if you haven't already. Do I use those rules, or do I just skip to the end? Just cut to the city. They've arrived. Maybe they take a couple of fatigue points, whatever. And there are options to do that in the game as well. But I thought, no, the point of this season was to playtest the game, so I'm going to do that. And I'm glad I did, because the journey from Matzaroth's tomb to the city of Venturir did not take very long game time, but it was, it was about a week or so for the characters, and there was just some cool things that happened because of those events. That's sort of the crown jewel of the journey system, right? Is the stuff that happens to you along the way. So I'm glad I did that. And now it's playing out as normal. So when I go into the final episode, I will handle it exactly as I would if I was running the game for a group of people using all the current rules. Not all of them, because there's a lot of things in the Broken Empires. It's treated a little like GURPS in that you've got the basic rules and then you've got a bunch of options you can add on top of that depending how complex you want it to be. So I'm not going to turn up all the dials because there's no need for it, right? Anyway, your other question here. Any plans for the future after the Broken Empires is released? Whew, if you thought about that already, of course. There's a time after the Broken Empires is released? I'm unaware of this. Yes, my plan is to get back to what I like to do on the channel, which is to play games. So yeah, there's plans for that. But I can tell you, like I can't tell you exact release dates right now, even though we have some pretty solid ones in our head. But we don't want to commit to, because we have to talk to our distributors and suppliers and things before I can give you a definite date, because I don't want to have to go back on my word. But it is coming. It's definitely this year. I can tell you that. But once that is done, once the game is in the hands of the backers, now I have to get out there and promote it to the people who weren't backers, right? I have to get it to the cons. I have to show up at the cons. I have to have that game being run at these cons, either by me or somebody else. Or various people, who want to run the game for people. The thing about the Broken Empires, I don't, and maybe I'm sticking my foot in my mouth here, but I don't believe it's a con-friendly game, because in my limited experience with gaming at conventions, the sort of lighter the game, the better, because there's not a lot of time to figure out complex rule systems. So if you're going to do a game that is complex, you would have to really focus in on one aspect of it. So Broken Empires is a perfect example of this. You could just do a combat or a series of combats in the Broken Empires in a 3-hour session and have a great experience with the combat system. But you wouldn't get any sense of the other things that make the game sing, which is the travel, right? The journey system, which is the intrigue system, the social encounter system, which is the magic system, either divine or weave magic system. These are all really interesting things that I'm really proud of, but you just can't pack all of that stuff into a 2 or 3 hour convention session or even a 4-hour session. So I've been trying to figure out how to do that. Like, I've been trying to come up with a con game that would be appropriate in terms of length, but it's tough. It's tough because of the nature of the game. It's a big lumbering beast, and there's so many awesome parts to it. I don't know how you'd showcase the whole thing. So it might just have to be a case of you're showcasing just one piece of it. I don't know. I'm still working on it. But I do have to get out there and do it because, we were named number 6 on N-World's most anticipated RPGs of 2026, and that's pretty great. So thanks to all of you who voted, by the way. I think 10,000 people voted, and we were right after Warhammer 5th Edition and Ars Magica. So that's pretty good for a little game that came out of nowhere. I mean, we're no Shadow Doc or anything, don't get me wrong, but I'm still very proud of the fact that we made it that high. So there's a lot of people that are excited about this game, and if they like it, there's no guarantee you're going to like it. I like it, but there's no guarantee you're going to like it. But if you guys do like it, then obviously we need it to be played so that more people can discover it. Right? And there's all kinds of ways to do that, but I'm going to have to get out there and hit the con circuit a lot more. And that's just part of it. And all that to say that I don't know what that means for my personal future. I don't want the channel to suffer. Like, I released, I think, 3 videos in 2025 on YouTube, not counting live chats. I don't like that. I enjoy making the videos. Whether that's Sage's Library or it's just a quick review of something, or it's just, like advice for something or whatever, right? It doesn't have to be a whole giant series, but I enjoy that. So I want to get back to doing that. Definitely want to get back to doing that. So, and your final question, the gear die in the Broken Empires, the whys and the hows of the gear die. How does it work? Why did you choose it opposed to other options? And also curious about how you're handling wealth. So, the gear die in the game is in there because the Broken Empires is not a game about collecting stuff. It's not about the accumulation of stuff. It's about the goals of the character. It's about the quote-unquote dramatic aspect of their lives, right? About what they're trying to pursue. So is stuff integral to that? Well, it is if it's integral to your goals. I will find the ancient sword of blah blah and use it to slay mine enemies. Okay, well in that case, the ancient sword of blah blah is pretty important. We need to have that. Or if you're like a merchant, right? I am a merchant and I deal in exotic items and I want to track down all these ancient artifacts. Okay, then that becomes important. But most of the time, gear is really not that big a deal. Now, there are very many schools of thought on this. I'm not saying that if you're in the dungeon, that it doesn't matter whether you have rope. No. What I'm saying is, I don't want to have to track all of that I don't want to have a giant list of, well, I've got 3 iron caltrops and 4 torches and 2 things of oil. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. That really works for a certain type of game, but the Broken Empires is not really that type of game. Now, that said, there are options to use it like that if you want. You can play the Broken Empires with those item lists if you want, but instead, normally, like the default is all of that gear is abstracted by the gear die. So this is inspired by a lot of the resource dice in Free League games, which is where I first saw it with the ammo die, right? Which we also have. And the way the ammo die works is every time you shoot, you roll that die. And the die is D12, D10, D8, D6, and that's where we stop. So if you start with the D12, every time you shoot, you roll a D12. And if it comes up a 1 or 2, that means your ammo has been reduced to the D10. So it means you're using ammunition. Now, how is this fundamentally different than counting arrows? In one sense, it's not, because you're still counting arrows. It's just the ammo die is an abstraction as opposed to the concrete, you have shot 1 out of 20 arrows. The reason why it's different is because when you roll a dice, it adds tension. It adds the element of the unknown. I fire, and in the chaos of combat, I'm not entirely sure how many arrows I'm going to have left. Now, if you've got a D12 die, you've got enough arrows for the fight. Like the odds of you rolling a 1 and then going down to D10, and then rolling a 2 and then going down to D8, and then rolling a 1 and going down to D6, and then rolling a 1 and being out, all in a row like that, I mean, it's possible, but that's part of the tension. It is possible. You might run out of arrows, but it almost never. I've never seen it happen. So that's why. The ammo die creates tension, and tension is good. So that's kind of the thing with the gear die. I want to abstract away all of the tracking of the little bits and this encumbrance, and it weighs this and blah, 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 blah. Although there still is encumbrance in the game. It's just not focused on that stuff. To just basically say, you have a gear die, D12 down to D6. If you need to use a thing in the moment that your character would reasonably have, based on who they are, based on their previous career, based on their back, whatever, and that thing isn't some crazy unique item, right? This is all GM discretion in the end. But if you need a thing that your character would reasonably have, then you have that thing. And then you roll the dice to see if your gear die reduces. So it is a highly abstracted way of dealing with stuff. Now, there's going to be a lot of arguments about this. Wait a minute. So you're saying that if my gear die is D6, and I pull out a lantern and then I roll a 1, I don't have any more light? Yes, correct. You've used up your gear. Now, there's many ways to represent that narratively, but it is designed to create tension without having to track inventory. Okay, well, yeah, that was my bad. I had the heater on in the room, and it died on me. Okay, well, if it happens again, I'm just going to go to my pre-show screen and try and continue asking you questions. Although, I think you guys... I think... Wait a minute. Oh, here we are. Yes, you can. Okay, good. You can hear me. All right. Good. All right. We'll see how long this lasts. Where the hell was I? I guess you still heard me, even when the camera went off. Anyway, I was talking about the gear die, I think. So, yeah, the gear die is an abstraction, and you don't have to use it, but it's baked into the cake that you will. But if you don't, you can use a regular inventory system, and you'll be just fine. All right. I hope this doesn't. Okay. All right. So then I want to talk about, and you asked about the wealth, how to handle wealth in the system. There's two ways of doing it. The first one is there's a silver piece economy, just like any other game. Again, it's not a game about the accumulation of stuff, so there's not a lot of attention paid to that, but it does exist. And then the other thing is, there's something called a status system. Status is purely optional, but a status system is included for people who want to play characters that are people of high social status, like nobles or stuff, or like merchant princes or things like that. If you want to do a game where you're, creating a merchant fleet to ply the sea lanes between Tickle Dundal and the Serpent's Isles and Hohenwald or something like that, then you can use the status rules to sort of help do all that. So it's very abstract again, but it is there. My friend Jared, who's a fellow designer, he was the one who came up with the system, and I really liked it. So I said, I want to put this in the game, and he said, okay, go ahead. So yes, there's the standard old silver piece economy, and then there's the status system as well that you can use to represent wealth. All right. Now Adala had a question. Can you explain the reason for the change in the travel system where you use the track score of the guide? The track score is the tens digit of the skill number. So if your track score is 65, your score is 6. Where you use the track score of the guide instead of the success levels for the amount of traveled hexes. Okay, so I know what you're talking about, but let me explain how it works. And it's changed a lot. So where we wound up was, there's many different steps in the journey system. First of all, there's two different types of travel. There's journey and then there's the hex crawl. But we're talking specifically about the journey. The journey is the more abstract thing. The journey is a system you use when you want to deal with long trips overland and you don't want to have to go day by day by day by day, right? If you do want to go day by day, you can do it using the hex crawl, or the hex march system, I should say. But for the journey system, there's a number of procedural steps that are all linked together by the GM's description and the players rolling and engaging with the system and taking fatigue or mitigating the resources and doing all that kind of stuff. But one of the first steps you do is the guide has to make a track roll to see not how far you get, but how far you get before an event befalls you. Now, events aren't always bad. Sometimes they're good, depending. Sometimes they're neutral. Sometimes they're whatever you turn them into. But regardless, the guide's job is to get you as far as he can, or she can, without having an event. Because when you have to stop to have an event, you also have to check to see if you've taken fatigue. And you also have to stop to see if any wounds have become infected, right? All of this stuff is part of that journey sequence. So the way it works with the guide is, the guide makes a track roll, okay? And then the formula for determining how many hexes, they're 10-mile hexes, how many hexes you get before an event befalls you is half the guide's score plus whatever SLs you roll. So if the guide score is, say, 70, okay, half of his score of 7 is 3.5, but you round up, so 4. So that means if he rolls a 53, let's say, he's got 5 SLs on that roll. So you take half the score, which is 4, plus the SLs, in this case of 5, and he moves 9 hexes before an event befalls you. That's a great roll. But if he fails the roll, then he just moves the base amount, which is half the score, in this case 4 hexes before an event. And there's a slight penalty on the fatigue roll to come because it wasn't the most efficient route, right? So that's how that works. Now, why did it turn like that? That's a hard question to answer because this travel system has evolved considerably over the past 2 years. It basically comes down to the fact that I wanted the guide to always move a minimum amount that made sense, even if they failed. That's why we couldn't do it where it was just, oh, you move as many hexes as you get SLs. Because what happens if you fail the roll? Well, then you don't move at all and you get an event. Okay, what if you, in the next leg of the next leg of the journey, you roll again, you fail, you don't move at all and have an event? It doesn't make any sense. So this works really well now. Yeah, so that's that. I hope that answers your questions. Let's go back and see where y'all left off. Vortak, have you checked out Dolmenwood? Campaign book makes it good for hex crawling. Yes, I own it. I own everything about Dolmenwood. As an OSR hex crawling product, it's brilliant. It's not for me. Not my favorite. I'm not an OSR guy. Not really. I'm not a D20 guy. I'm not a variant of D&D guy. Although I appreciate what they've done with certain journey rules and things like this. Also, I'm not a huge fan of the setting because I'm not a fan of what I call the menagerie settings, where people can play all kinds of like cat people and dog men and dragon kin and all this stuff. To me, that's just way, way, way too high fantasy. But I understand what Dolmenwood's doing. Dolmenwood's trying to create this fairy tale-like setting. So what it does great. It's just not for me. I'm currently in a RuneQuest current edition, which would be RuneQuest 6 or Mithras, I'm guessing, or are you talking about the actual RuneQuest that was re-released by Chaosium? I'd like to know. As soon as and I'd as soon go to something a little bit lighter, or quite a bit lighter. I understand that. I don't know anything about Chaosium's new version of RuneQuest. Where I left off with RuneQuest was RuneQuest 6, which is also Mithras. Mithras is a great game, and it's a huge inspiration of the Broken Empires. However, for me, Mithras is just that much too complex. And I really mean that much too complex. So in the combat system of the Broken Empires, again, lots of things inspired by Mithras, but simplified. I don't want to say simplified because that makes it sound like Mithras is overly complex. It's not overly complex. Mithras does exactly what it does, exactly as it should. It's just, for my personal tastes, I like things a little bit lighter. So that's all that is. But I don't know anything about Chaosium's version of Glorantha. I don't know what they changed. I know nothing about that stuff. I was never a Glorantha guy. I never really got it. To be fair, I never really dived into the setting, too, when it first came out in the 70s or 80s. I first encountered RuneQuest for real. Well, I played in Glorantha, but I didn't really know it was Glorantha. It wasn't a big part of our experience. The setting itself didn't feel like a character like it probably should. It just felt like another generic fantasy world. But when I first ran RuneQuest, it was RuneQuest 3, which was the Viking real-world historical fantasy version of it. So Glorantha was not a part of it at all. And I really liked RuneQuest 3, even though, yes, it had a lot of problems, blah, 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 blah. But I really dug it. I'd still run it today. RuneQuest 3. A little clunky in places, but hey, what game isn't, right? I enjoy organized play for Pathfinder 2e. Of course, now I'm diverse in playing many other games, excited for the Broken Empires. Well, I'm excited for it too, and I'm excited to see or to hear that you guys are playing it and hopefully enjoying it. When I was younger, we played all night. Not now. Yeah, I know. I know. I played the heck out of Warhammer Fantasy. Love that. The Old World is coming out, which looks good. Yeah. So I'm a massive Warhammer fan. Warhammer Fantasy RPG started with first edition when it first came out in 86, I think it was. The Old World is out, at least in PDF. I have it. I briefly experimented with it at Gen Con last year when they were running it there. I like it, but the thing about Warhammer Fantasy, and I see Robert is leaving, but to answer your question, the RuneQuest I'm in is the Chaosium Adventures in Glorantha. Okay, cool. That was this comment here. Okay, thanks for joining me, Robert, and thanks for the answer. I don't know much about Chaosium, but thanks for coming out. The hell was I saying? Warhammer. Oh yeah, the thing about Warhammer Fantasy to me is the setting of the game is grim and dark and everyone's covered in filth. You're nobodies. And no matter what you do, you cannot stop chaos from taking over. The best you can hope to do is to stave off the ultimate triumph of chaos for just another few years. It's a hopeless world, but not really, because despite the inevitable victory of chaos, that's where the hope comes in, is in living for just another day and doing the right thing and being heroes for just another day, despite the fact you're a rat catcher or a coal burner or a scribe or whatever, right? Now, not all characters in Warhammer were that. You could be knights and bounty hunters and lords and blah, blah, blah. But by default, the beauty of Warhammer Fantasy was that, first of all, it took place in this kind of Renaissance era, early Renaissance, late medieval period, which was a nice change from the high medieval fantasy of D&D. That was great. But the system itself also supported that idea that things were grim and gritty and you were nobody, you were nothing. But you still had fate points, and fate points could save you from death, because you weren't nothing. You were something. But you weren't very good at your job. Because your roll sucked typically the time. It became a comedy of errors a lot of the time with the die system. But that helped inform the experience of the game. I couldn't imagine playing Warhammer Fantasy 1st Edition in that world, in that setting of 25 or 2512, I think was the year. I can't remember. I couldn't imagine playing that setting with any other system because it would just feel wrong. So Warhammer the Old World is a completely different system. It's a D10 dice pool system. It's much easier. It's very streamlined. It's good. It's really good. I like it. It would move a lot faster. It's a lot easier to ken, a lot easier to figure out. And to be fair, they've put it, I think it's 200 years before Warhammer 1st Edition. So it's before a lot of stuff has happened. So it feels slightly more, the age feels slightly more heroic. And consequently, the system feels slightly more heroic too. So that is why I'm willing to give it a chance, because they moved it back in time to a different time. They didn't try and just put a new system in the same setting, the exact same time period. That would have been wrong. That would have felt wrong. So that's why because to me, I think Warhammer, where you're big damn heroes and you've got all these things you can do when you're super powerful, like D&D characters, I go, nah, that's not right. But I'm willing to give this a chance because they altered. They didn't alter the setting. They set it in a slightly earlier version of the Empire. So, but other than that, it looks good. I mean, I like it. I like it a lot. Rewatching season 1 again for the 3rd time. Every time I watch it, I find something that I missed. It's such a treasure rewatching the 3 seasons. Well, thank you, Eric. Thank you for your patronage and your support. My first D&D was 4th edition, and it was really confusing. But I was like 9 when I tried it. And compared to 5e, I really don't know which is more complex. Fair enough. But for me, too many rules just slows things down a lot. That's true in most cases. The only time that doesn't happen is where you have people that have internalized those rules and they flow like water. That happens with, it takes some dedication though. It takes players who are dedicated to learning the game. And depending on the game, that can take a little bit of time or it can take longer. But for example, in my Harnmaster game, Harnmaster on the surface looks extremely complex. And it is, but not as complex as it looks. And once you internalize it, and once you figure out the rhythms of the game, it's pretty simple. In fact, most of the game is front-loaded. You have to do most of the calculations at character creation. And everything after that, it works pretty simply. So yes, it is complex. And yes, there are more rules. And yes, it does slow things down. But, first of all, speed is not the be-all and end-all. Everybody talks about that. Oh my God, it's so fast. Fast is not necessarily the best thing in the world. You just don't want things to be bogged down and kill the pace. So with Harnmaster, we got it to the point very quickly where we knew it. Bang, 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 bang. So these very complex rules were internalized quickly, and we were able to resolve combats, for example, because that was the most complex thing, quite quickly, and it was very satisfying. So in general, that's true. Too many rules slow things down, but speed is not always the be-all, end-all, and as long as what you're getting out of those complex rules gives you something of value, then that's okay. Again, that's what the Broken Empires is predicated on. The Broken Empires is not a rules-light game, and it is not a fast game. It is a game that exists on a spectrum, like all games do, between detail of resolution and speed of outcome. And for me, I like things to be on the side of detail of resolution, but not so far towards detail of resolution that the game bogs down, right? That's the holy grail of positioning on that spectrum for me, and I feel I've achieved it. It may not be the case for you. You might read it and go, oh, there's too many rules. Or you might go, oh, there's not enough rules, or who knows, right? This was made from my perspective and what I value in a game. Presumably, a lot of other people out there will value at least the majority of that too, considering that there was a bunch, 5,000 backers. So we shall see. Where are we here? I'd love to spend some time on the Broken Empires. Is there a favorite idea that ended up working out better than expected? Have you enjoyed the process and work involved in making this project real? That is a big question. Is there a favorite idea that ended up working out better than expected? Yeah, lots. So the journey system in the game was heavily inspired by the One Ring, first edition, which a lot of people didn't like. A lot of people criticized, I saw, nobody I know, but I saw online, a lot of people criticizing the travel system, the journey system in the One Ring, in the most ridiculous way possible. They would say, well, this is just a bunch of rules. All you do, just a procedure. You just roll, and then you roll again, and then you're at the place. Well, dummy, that's the same as anything in any game. You know what that is? You've just described combat in a poorly run game. Because that's just a series of rolls, too. It's a moronic take. Any game can be reduced to a series of rolls, and yeah, then it sucks. Any game can be elevated by taking the procedure that those rules represent and breathing life into them. That's what I felt the One Ring did. It breathed life into the journeys that you made across Middle-earth by implementing these procedures and allowing the GM to roll with that. So it was heavily inspired. My travel system was heavily inspired by that. And then I cranked up the complexity a little bit to give players a little more, to have more stuff going on, right? And luckily, not only did it work really well. That everybody who's played this has said the same thing to me. They've said, wow, man, when you travel in this game, it feels like you've been on the road. It feels exhausting in the best possible way. And that little addendum is pretty important. It feels exhausting in the best possible way. It feels like you have been traveling for a long time. And that was the greatest compliment I could get, because that's exactly what the system was designed to do. So that was a favorite idea that ended up working out better than expected, for sure. Have I enjoyed the process and work involved? Yeah, I have. It's been a lot. I said on Discord this morning that it is by far, the biggest and most complex creative endeavor I've ever been involved with, and I've been involved with some doozies in my life. I was a filmmaker, for God's sake, so I produced and directed films, and that is a huge endeavor. I wrote a show and toured a show for 4 years, a live show, theater show. That was a gargantuan endeavor. I've done all kinds of things. But this is the biggest and the hardest, and so probably also the most rewarding, because, of course, that's how it works, right? The harder something is, the more rewarding it's going to turn out to be. Your background here is a Broken Empire's hex map. Oh, good eye. Can you share it on the shop? We have the no hex one. Yeah, that's funny you say that. There is a hex map for the GM. It's called the GM map. It is a version of the map that comes on the as a free download right now in the store. Eventually, that map will be available, because that map has everything the main map has, except it's more usable. In that a lot of the big words of like kingdoms and stuff are removed, and a lot of the, in fact, all of the iconography, for like cities, towns, castles, ruins, all of that stuff is removed and replaced with more easily to use things like dots, right? So there's a legend on it. So for example, like a single dot is, I think it's like a village or a town. And then a dot with a circle in it is a city. And then a circle dot with a star in it, that's the capital city. Basic stuff we've all seen a million times. But it makes the map super usable for the GM to be able to do journeys, because with the hexes, you know exactly, and you can allow the players to literally track their course on the map, so you can see right now on the pretty map, as we call it, That's a little harder to do because, like, for example, if you look at the city of Ancharir in the Red Wastes, according to the scale of the map, the icon of the city makes it look like the city is 50 miles wide, which it is not. But it looks good on the map, right? But from a usability perspective, it's not as good. That's why I had my friend Ross, who's my cartographer. I said, I need you to do me a hex map of this where we remove some of those things, we replace some of those things. And it's great, the one that he has. But we're still working on it. We're still tweaking it. And we're still figuring out how we can get it to you. But yes, good eye. The answer is yes. It will be available sometime soon. Trevor Sessions led me to buy Dragonbane. It is a system that I really liked the first look I had, but I have yet to really dive into it. Just no time, boy. I hear that. Dragonbane's awesome. Give it a chance. It's not complicated. It's not hard to learn. So much fun. So much fun. I'm finding that even being retired doesn't give me enough time to play everything I'd like to. Oh, brother, I hear that. I hear that. Forgotten Realms Grey Box. Besides the maps, there wasn't a lot of illustrations, and I loved that. It left the whole setting up to us to fill it out ourselves. I could not agree more. That's exactly how I felt. I was like, oh, I'm a bit zoomed out because the camera died. Let me zoom in a bit. Oh, too much. Too much? Oh, too much. Let's come on again here. Great. All right, that'll do. Yes, the Grey Box was awesome because of exactly that. It hinted at all of this stuff, but it didn't really tell you. And that was great because it just fired my imagination, and I was allowed to personalize and individualize the Forgotten Realms. My Forgotten Realms was completely different than yours or anyone else's. And that's a strength as far as I'm concerned, right? In Harn, we have a thing called the P Harn, which I believe stands for Personal Harn, which just means that even though you've got this incredibly detailed setting, everybody still makes it their own. And so if someone was to come to my Harn games, like if a fellow Harniac, as we're called, was to come to my Harn game, they probably wouldn't recognize it. Oh, they'd recognize the geography, and they'd recognize the names, and they'd recognize the cultures, but they wouldn't recognize the feel of the game because my Harn game is pretty much run like Game of Thrones. It was run like George R. R. Martin wrote it. So very, very grounded, very realistic, very gritty. But there are Harn games out there that are super high magic, where you got wizards running around blasting orcs and dragons and stuff. So Forgotten Realms was like that. It was deeply, it was able to be personalized, and I really appreciated that. The hard part is that there doesn't seem to be any groups around me to join. At least I haven't found any yet. Well, you know, I'm a big proponent of in-person games, but I also understand the reality that in this day and age, it's easier to find a game online. So there's that, you've heard the phrase better, no gaming is better than bad gaming. That's true, but I would also say that VTT-based gaming is better than no gaming. VTTs allow us to play with people that either we don't know and we can meet, or more importantly, I think, play with people that we're separated from physically and can still play. That's a great boon. So as much as I am not a fan of the interface in terms of, it's just not the same experience. Playing a role-playing game through a VTD online is not the same experience as being around the table with the same people, breathing the same air, rolling real dice, taking notes with pencils, all of that stuff. It's not the same thing. I'm not saying it's worse, I'm saying it's different. And I value the fact that I'm still able to play with my friends in Vancouver and Edmonton and LA and wherever else, Toronto, Ottawa, wherever. I value that. And that can only happen because of this technology that we have. Right? So that's why I'm not super disparaging about VTTs, because they've been enormously useful and provided a lot of good times. I would love to see you do a new 5 parsecs from home using the new Planetfall book. Loved your series you ran. Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot. Ivan just released, what was it called? It was basically a big compendium of all the rules, but you could use like tanks and stuff like that. I have it. And I'd love to run it, but I think my next, if I get to it, it won't be for a while, because my next thing is going to be fantasy. My next series is probably going to be Rangers of Shadowdeep, because I've got a bunch of campaigns for that, and I love that game. So that'll probably what happens. Be what happens. I'd agree that games like The Broken Empires likely aren't one-shot or con-friendly. Games like this really need room to breathe to understand them. Yeah, exactly. And that's just the way it is, you know? I got to give it to Kelsey, man. When she released Shadow Dark, she created a game that is so easy to learn and play. It's a con darling because of that, you know? Like, you can just pick it up and go in 5 minutes. But Broken Empires is not that, and it's just the way it is. It's designed to service an audience that wants a little more, right? The price for that is that it's not really good at cons. So my market's going to be smaller. My audience is going to be smaller. But that's okay, because that's who it was designed for in the first place. I'm not trying to create a mass market appeal game. If I was, I would have made an OSR clone, right? But I'm not. I'm trying to service people like me who just want something a little more complex, right? While it might not have been successful at teaching the game, the sessions were still helpful in showing the evolution in terms of system development. Well, that's true. That you're talking about the Broken Empires in season 4 of Me, Myself, and I of the show. Yeah, and that was the point, to show the development of the games. So I'm glad that worked. You know, I'm glad you got that. You got something out of that. I have a feeling it frustrated more people than it helped, but I could be wrong about that. I could be wrong. I plan to run a Broken Empires campaign locally ASAP once the rules get out to me. Well, that will not be long now, my friend. It will not be long now. Make sure you can do an advice video on how to make a RPG. Not a TTRPG, an RPG. I'm sure you've got some great advice from all your experience. Yeah, we were talking about this in Discord. I'm positive that there will be YouTube videos forthcoming about my experiences running a Kickstarter, delivering a game, designing a game, all that stuff. Because it's a lot of stuff I learned. I mean, it's been 2 years ago, 3 years, basically, by the time the game comes out. So I've learned a lot. As a Carlos fan, yay, Carlos, justice for Carlos. Any chance of seeing him in Season 5 whenever it happens? Let's not talk about Season 5. I don't even see the idea of doing a Season 5 right now is too crushing to me right now. I too hope that Carlos eventually emerges, because, you know, he's a loose end. He survived after all. Spoilers. Can you talk about the naval chapter? Do you have ship? Do you have ship stat blocks? Yes. The naval chapter is adapted directly from the rules I made for Dominion rules for season 3 of the show. So they are not as detailed as like a combat would be. But if you want to get a sense of what a naval combat in the Broken Empires looks like, go watch season 3. It'll be a lot like that when there's naval combats happening. Now, that was Dominion rules, so everything was using a D12 die. This is percentile dice. But the concept and the philosophy is still the same, and the basic structure is still the same. And there are ship stat blocks. Yes, there are, included in the book. So you can run all kinds of naval combats right out of the book. I've actually seen the ammo die exhaust the dice chain in a single session exactly one time. Oh, exactly one time in over 100 sessions of Forbidden Lands. It ended up being a great moment in game. Yeah, right. Like, it's so rare that when it happens, it's significant. So that's kind of cool, you know? But it doesn't. All right, and now here we are. Yep. This is where I am in the chat. I'm behind, trying to catch up. Okay, I lost my camera. Been reading a lot about Warhammer the Old World. It looks great. It is great. It is. Check it out. Hello, No More. Hello. I hope you're still here. I know this was 15 minutes ago or so. But hello. You could probably use the journey system as the majority of your campaign, depending on roles. You absolutely could. I mean, it depends what the campaign's about. If the campaign is about traveling across the face of the Broken Empires, then yeah, the journey system's going to be awesome. And you could just have people going from one spot to another. It could be like an old TV series in the 80s where, you know, these characters are just wanderers, and every episode they wind up at a different town and they do something and then they move on. Sure, you could. It'd be great. In an actual group game with Broken Empires, would you or do you use Oracle questions like in solo play? Example, is there a danger here? GM rolling on the Oracle chart. You absolutely can. And in fact, I have a section in the Game Master's chapter, in the Game Master's Guide of the book, that specifically talks about how and why and when to use solo tools as a GM. Because honestly, that's been one of my greatest discoveries as a GM is solo tools to use in a game with players. It's great. In fact, one of the things I love to do so much is to take some system that I don't know very well, teach the players, make characters, whatever, and then just start having no idea what's going to happen and just use the Oracle. Just use the generator just as I would in a solo game, except it's the player's actions that I'm responding to. And it's great because I know what's going to happen. I have no idea what's going to happen. So yes, absolutely you can and should. Yes, Rangers of Shadow Deep. Great game. Super fun minis game. Super fun. I know you had mentioned the Broken Empire's how to play tutorial videos. Will you release those after the release or before? So sorry if you've answered. I've not answered about this, but that's a good question. Yes. So the Broken Empire's tutorial videos were a stretch goal that we unlocked during the campaign. So I will be releasing those. I can't shoot them until I finish Season 4, which, as I said earlier, is hopefully going to be this week. Because I can't shoot them until I break down the set for Episode 4. Season 4, rather. Once I do that, that becomes a new priority for me, is shooting those tutorial videos. So I don't know exactly when they'll come out, because, I want to produce them and I want to make sure they're good and I want to make sure that they're useful, right? But they are definitely coming out later this year. I could try and coincide them with the release of the PDF or something, but I don't know when it's going to come out. But they will. And there's going to be separate ones. There's going to be chapters on combat, on magic, on divine magic, which is different than Weave Magic, significantly different than Weave Magic, on intrigue, like social encounters, on travel, on the 2 types of travel, probably even on the core systems, right, to show how many different ways and options you have to resolve a basic test, if you want to call it that. Because there are, right? Like, there's many ways to do things. You could do a standard test, which, a standard roll, I should say, not a test, where you've got a skill of 65, roll 65 or less, you succeed. That's all you need to know. That's for a binary result. Or you could do a standard test when SLs matter, right? Because there's some skills or situations where your success level, your quality of success, your degree of success, actually matters, in which case your tens die is the success level, right? If your skill is 65 and you roll a 42, you succeeded with 4 SLs. That has specific meanings based on the context, based on the skill. Or you could do an opposed roll. An opposed roll is working against some other force. If that other force is another skill, then both skills roll, and then we determine the outcome, right? They both roll. Whoever succeeds wins. If they both succeed, whoever gets the most SLs wins. If the SLs are tied, whoever rolled higher wins. If those are tied, and so on and so on, right? But sometimes you're rolling an opposed roll against a fixed number, right? This is typical with like a trap or a poison or something like that. All that means is imagine the opposed roll rolled a certain amount of SLs. So if you're rolling against 4, that means you have to generate 4 SLs on your roll. Now, sometimes that's all or nothing. If you don't generate 4 SLs, you suffer the full effect. That's like magic, right? But then there's gradations of that. Sometimes your degree of success matters against that. So if you roll for your resistance, we'll call it, 2 SLs against a target number of 4, then you only suffer the effects of 2 SLs worth of that effect, whatever that is, right? So all of this stuff, there's so many options to handle things. So I'll probably do a tutorial video just on the core mechanics chapter so people get a sense. And again, this is not rocket science. This is not me reinventing the wheel. This is just, this is me taking all of the many permutations of the D100 rules and showing how you can use them in the Broken Empires, right? So there's lots going on. Trevor also has an actual play video using solo oracles as a GM to run a game. That video inspired me to adapt that to my own play, and I still do it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was the behind the GM screen. That's when I was actually... It's the one and only time I've used D&D 5e on the channel. And I think I've mentioned this in a stream before. That I was convinced that was going to be a big hit video because I was using 5e, and I was showing how to use oracles in actual play. And if you haven't seen it, you should go check it out. I'm very proud of it. There's only 2 episodes. It's called Behind the GM Screen. It's on the channel here. And I'm improvising a 5e game with 2 of my friends. And I'm using the oracles to determine what happens, but every time they do something that I need an answer to, I consult the oracle. And then I turn to you, the audience, and I explain my thinking about what I'm about to come up with. I thought it was very useful, but nobody watches it. Because nobody watches anything except 9 tips on how to roleplay or all that stuff. Whatever. YouTube is what YouTube is. Thanks again for these streams. I need to get to the galley and prepare food for the masses. The golden retriever is about to gnaw my foot off. Thank you, Jason. Thanks for coming. As far as the Broken Empire's world, I know the map represents a section of the world. My question to you is if you have the ideas of the rest of the world, even if it is conceptual. Yes, I do have ideas, even if it is conceptual. As a GM, what's the most important thing to prep for a session? Wow, there's a question. Excuse me. That's a question with 1,000 answers. Because it depends what the game is. Depends who your players are. Depends what the system is. Depends on a lot. If you look at the Powered by the Apocalypse games, they would say nothing. Don't prep anything. In fact, it's against the rules for the GM to prep anything. If you look at certain OSR games, they might say, have a dungeon in your pocket. A 5-room dungeon in your pocket, just in case they go to one. If you look at the Broken Empires, for example, what's the most important thing to prep for a session? That's a tough answer. That's a tough answer because the Broken Empires is a game that by design reacts to what the players do based on their goals. So the player characters have goals, and they're pursuing those goals. Their pursuit of those goals determines the structure of the adventure, so to speak. So what a GM has to prepare for is everything. Now, luckily, there's tools in the Broken Empire's rulebook to give you guidance. There's all kinds of randomizer tools, all kinds of ways to structure events, all kinds of stuff in there. You should never feel like, I don't know what they encounter, because there's a bazillion pages of randomizer tools, all categorized. So I would say, talking specifically about the Broken Empires, just have a good handle on the stat blocks of the monsters and the enemies, because if there is a fight, that's easily the most complicated thing in the game, is a fight. But once you understand the stat block, and once you understand how things work in the game, it's really not hard to plug in a few numbers that make sense. Again, the Broken Empire's creature stat blocks, they're not really intimidating. In fact, a lot of people have said that they're less complex than Pathfinder's creatures are, which is good. But there's different elements on it that might scare away people who are unused to this kind of game. Like, for example, a D&D player is going to look at this and go, oh my God, look at all the hit locations. How am I supposed to... Wait a minute, each location has different armor points. What's an armor point? That stuff. But if you know the game, you look at that stat block and you know exactly what you're looking at right now. It's like a code. Bang, 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 bang. Oh, that's the ferocity. Yep, there's the skills. Okay, got this. That's the weapon they use. Oh, these are the creature abilities, right? With the description beside it. Great. Oh, there's its toughness. Yep. Okay, good. And its death threshold. Yep, got it. Here's its hit location. Here's its armor points in each location. Here's the spot to mark a wounds. Blah, 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 blah. It's easy. But I would say that because you never know... I mean, there's a bestiary in the game. There's a monster manual in the main book. So you can always draw on that. But there's always going to be places where you need to make up an enemy, right? But it's actually not that hard to do. It's one of the most important supplements I ever had or used when I was running Hornmaster was a supplement called Gant's House Rules, I think. And one section of that document had a whole list of different combinations of armor on enemies. Because in Hornmaster, you have not just head, body, arms, legs. You've got head, eye, nose, skull, ear, neck, upper chest, thorax, abdomen, left hand, left forearm, left elbow, left bicep, left shoulder. And all of those pieces can have armor. So what Gant did was put together lists of pre-made enemies with different types of armor based on general categories. Lighter armor, heavier armor, blah, blah, blah. Hugely useful. Now, you don't need to do that in the Broken Empires because it's not that complicated. But you can. You can set up a bunch of armor sets if you want in advance just to have them ready to go, just in case. That's probably useful. But again, you don't strictly need it. The most important thing to prep is the time to meet. Exactly. Would you have a campaign book for the future to expand on the conceptual ideas? Yeah, I mean, that's in the pipeline. I don't want to talk too much about future supplements because we're just trying to get this one out first. I don't want to make promises until I fulfill the first one. But it's in the pipeline. New adventures, new supplemental books, new like advanced players guides, all that kind of stuff. Because there's all kinds of stuff that did not make the cut to the main book, which is really good stuff. We just ran out of space. So yeah, there's definitely going to be stuff. And like the idea is ultimately if the game does well and if people like it, then I'll hire people. I'll hire writers to come on and do stuff. Because if people like it and they want more, I got to give it to them. But I can't do everything myself. That's insane. I have a career. I have a life and a YouTube channel to provide quality content for my patrons and YouTube members and general subscribers. You said on Discord you have a lot to say about the magic system in its current form. Can you talk a bit about it? Yeah. Did I say that? Wow. Yeah, what to say about weave magic? What I wanted in this game was for spell weavers to be able to craft whatever effect they wanted in the moment, not based on a list of spells that they memorize or anything like that. Not based on, I know this spell which is useful in this exact situation and in no other. I love creative use of magic. I always have. One of my favorite things to do in every game I've ever played in is to play a wizard and find the most creative use of any spell I have and really think outside the box. Now, games like D&D make that very hard to do because games like D&D say, here are the exact parameters of what magic can do. This spell does this and no more. I find that horribly boring and predictable. So I wanted a system that allowed the spellweaver to craft the effect based on their knowledge of the pieces of magic, which are called binds and strands. These are heavily influenced by Ars Magica. There's 5 binds, which is how to bind your will upon the tapestry of reality. And the strands are the pieces of that tapestry that you pull to reweave into a new pattern, into a new shape. There are 10 of those. Very much like Ars Magica. There's 5 verbs and 10 nouns. So too in the Broken Empires, there are 5 binds and 10 strands. They're slightly different than Ars Magica, but they cover the same basic idea. You use your skill in the bind to cast a spell, and your skill in the strand allows you to control the effect, as well as power certain specifics about the effect. The most complicated thing about the magic system is, I was going to say, is actually putting the pieces together, but it's not. I have universally found that every player who has played a magic user in this game is very intimidated by it when they see it, and then after about their second or third spell, they're perfectly fine. They're like, yep, got it, bang, 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 and they're whipping up spells, and they got it all together. So it's great. The complexity comes really in 2 parts. One is determining the magnitude. That is up to the GM. And what the magnitude is how offensive to reality the spell is. The more offensive to reality, the more the magic is so unbelievably that it tears against what we know to be real, the higher the magnitude, which means the harder it is to control, and the more likely the weave reaction from that spell. There's 4 gradations of magnitude: discreet, subtle, offensive, and vulgar. Now, there's very specific descriptions and suggestions as to what these magnitudes mean, but ultimately it's up to each table to determine. Because ultimately, like, what is the difference between subtle, which is something that is so common, there's no way that you would ever suspect that was magic, and discreet, which is, well, that was a little odd, but I can buy it. That's a very, very narrow parameter, right? Now, I know what it means at my table. But you might have a different interpretation. And that's okay, because so much of the Broken Empire's magic system is about interpretation. It's about customizing it to your own table, about deciding this is the limit of magic. This is what magic can and can't do. Now, there are hard limits, too. There's something called the five laws, the five laws of the bounded laws of magic. And these set limits on how magic works and what it can do. For example, no weave magic can ever bring back the dead. No weave magic can ever reduce fatigue. There's reasons for that. Weave magic can't affect the sun or the moon or the stars. Stuff like that. But in terms of how do you do an invisibility spell? Well, there's many ways to do that. Do you destroy the light around the subject so that they are not seen? Okay, that would be destroy air, because light is part of the strand of air. Do you control the thought of the observer so that they don't see the person? That's a type of invisibility. Do you literally change the fabric of that person's body? Do you change body so that the light passes through? This is obviously a vulgar spell, right? There's many ways to do it, and it's all contingent upon how the spell weaver crafts the spell and describes the effect. So again, what we've universally found is that the Spellweaver players are always trying to make their spells as subtle as possible so that they're easier to control, which means you have a world in which magic exists, but the big, flashy, powerful magic is relatively rare because it's very dangerous. Because when you tempt the tapestry of reality like that, when you tempt the weave responds, it reacts. And very often that reaction is not good to the caster. It's not always like you're not summoning demons and ripping yourself into the next dimension, but it's not good, right? There's definite effects. And it's not always bad. Sometimes there's weave reactions that are actually positive, right? But that's rare. It's cool. It takes a lot of negotiation. Not negotiation. That makes it sound like it's some battle of lawyers or something. It's not negotiation. It takes a lot of interpretation, and it takes good faith interpretation on the part of the player and the GMs to be working together to understand the limits of what that spell. You can't have a situation where you don't want a situation where a GM is out to get the players. You don't want that in any game, but especially not the Broken Empires. If you're that kind of player, if you're an adversarial GM, this is not going to work for you. Move on. Buy a different game. Yeah. All right. In your experience, what region of Harnworld is your favorite or region that you were drawn to from playing or GMing? Chibisa or Chibisa or Chibisa, depending who you talk to. For me, it's Chibisa or Chibisa. Even I forget how I pronounced it. Chibisa. Chibisa is a tiny little kingdom to the south of Kaldor. And it's awesome because it's very manageable. You can have all the great, like, political intrigue, but have like a real effect. Like your local knights can have a real effect on the political intrigue of the king's court. So we got into all kinds of Game of Thrones kind of stuff in Chibisa. It was great. And it's geographically located to be in the middle of all of these really interesting areas. So there's a lot of traffic going through there. There's a lot of adventure. And it's also a wilderness kingdom, basically. It's a kingdom on the edge of several vast wildernesses. So the possibility for adventure is vast in Chibisa. It's a great, great area. All right. There will be a part of the Monster Manual of the Broken Empires that explains how to create your own monster, like in Dungeon World. To an extent, yes. You don't really need it, and you'll see why when you read the book. Once you understand how the system works, it becomes very easy to apply skills, weapons, armor, those kind of things to an enemy. You're as a GM, you're able to quickly eyeball what is tough, what is not tough. So you don't really need like a formulaic thing. Now, that said, there are specific things in the beginning of the bestiary that talk about, how to gauge a monster's difficulty, things to think about, rough guidelines on that. So that's all there, but it's not a formula like you might see in Forbidden Lands. Forbidden Lands is a very specific formula when you're creating monsters or your demons, right? Which is great, but this game doesn't have that. That's not really how I roll. But there is guidance to, you're not left high and dry. Is there any thought to having Spellweavers exist somehow after they finally get hit with their last weave reaction, like a new type of creature, or they just toast? So what you're talking about, Vortak, is fraying. Fraying is kind of a natural limiter to all Spellweavers. All Spellweavers run the risk of accumulating fraying. Fraying is literally the pattern of their being is getting frayed. And at some point, the weave plucks you out of reality and says, that's enough. You've messed with reality enough. You are completely frayed. Now, what does that mean? It means the character's taken out of play. Are they dead? No one knows. But what is definitely known is that no attempt has ever been successful at reversing fraying. And now I leave it up to you. Regarding Spellweaver creature stat blocks, how do you set up those? You can do it like a normal character, or there's a bit of a shortcut that I put in the bestiary that shows you how to handle magical effects for NPCs. Because the fact is, there's a lot of stuff with monsters and NPCs that you don't have to track as a GM that's really important for a player character to track, but it's really not that important for the GM to track for the monster. So I have a little shortcut. There's little tricks in there, all through there. I like magic a lot. It reminds me of the paradox in Mage. Yes, that was an inspiration. For sure. Okay, I think this is going to be it, guys, because we've been at this for a while, even though some of it was with a black screen. I guess this qualifies as adversarial. To me, weave mechanics would make it fun to funnel the players into desperate situations to push them to be tempted to cast more dangerous spells. That, my friend, is not adversarial. That's good GMing. What you are describing is putting obstacles in front of the player characters to overcome, to get what they want. That's good. That's your job as a GM. Funnel the players into desperate situations. I wouldn't say funnel them. I would say prepare for situations where they could get into desperate, dire straits. Funnel them makes it seem like you're forcing them. You don't want to force them. But you can certainly suggest, and you can guide things on the other side to get them to these places. But certainly to push them to be tempted to cast more dangerous spells, that is fantastic. Yeah, that's great. That's exactly what you want to do. Because everything in this game is about a trade-off. It's about a difficult choice. It's about, do I do this knowing that there's a cost? That's the whole game. Do I do this knowing that there's a cost? That is threaded through every system in the game. Combat, intrigue, travel, magic, everything. Do I do this knowing the cost? That should be the subtitle of the game. Anyway, that's it for now, guys. Thanks for joining me. I will be doing this every week, although it's going to be back and forth. So I think next week I do Wednesday night again. This may not work. It might be too confusing for people for me to do like 1 week it's Wednesday night, the next week Saturday afternoon, the next week Wednesday night, the next week Saturday afternoon. I don't know. We'll see how it works. We'll see how people respond to this. But for now, that's the schedule, and I will change it as I need to going forward. But thanks, everybody, and thanks so much for your support and your patronage and your memberships and your views and your subscriptions and all that stuff. Couldn't do it without you. All right, friends, I will see you all later.